Hi there. Well, it's been confirmed. Stephen Fleming, the New England Test coach, although he won't start till after the series against Pakistan for some reason, and Root, the new captain, Back to the Future for the ECB there. Um, I think what this indicates is an ECB basically in crisis, poor leadership, poor management, and a kind of really a dog's dinner of a decision. They decided not to sack McCollum completely, which then meant that the new coach had to work for McCollum, had to work with McCollum. Sorry, McCollum staying as white ball coach, which would put off a lot of kind of credible managers out there, credible coaches. It also meant that they also didn't sack Key, which meant the new coach would have to work with Rob Key, and so the new coach is in a difficult situation, especially if he's like a credible kind of sought after coach, where he's working with two absolute bozos. So how so that does kind of restrict the pool of talent that you're able to get there. So given that they've gone for Fleming, a great white ball, more specifically T20 coach. But he's made the test coach despite having no experience of coaching a test side. I don't think he's got an experience of coaching in 4-day cricket. Maybe he has. I don't think he has. He was a good test captain years and years ago as a player, but similar to McCollum, no experience as a test coach. So it looks like England have made the same mistake they made with McCollum. It might be different. He might be more of a details man and more involved than McCollum. And just because he hasn't coached at test level before doesn't mean he won't be able to. But it's still um, a bit of a kind of underwhelming appointment. Next is the fact that they've appointed Root as captain. Now, it's not the case he's an interim captain. Trescothic's the interim coach against Pakistan. And you'd think, well, you just have Root as a safe pair of hands to keep things ticking along. It's the fact he is actually the captain now. And I think that's not Root's fault. Root was an okay captain. He achieved more as captain than Stokes, for instance. He beat India 4-1 as captain. Um, so that I think he had an impressive series win in Sri Lanka as well, and in South Africa. So and amongst a lot of defeats as well. But the people who thought Stokes was much better were just kind of beguiled by some kind of high scoring. It's got high scoring performances in series that they would win anyway. So anyway, Root's recalled, which isn't ideal. And I think the reason is he's recalled is because everyone else in the team, um, or all the candidates, have been groomed through the McCollum Stokes era, which means they're all incredibly entitled and unpleasant. And the group of players produced in this era are somewhat talented, but not particularly ruthless, not particularly hard, and very entitled. And I think if someone like Brooke had come through Steve Waugh, Alan Border, even Cook, or Strauss's era, Vaughan's era, um, he would have been a good candidate for captain. But he's been like a kid get let loose in the house when his parents are away, um, and he does not look like a test captain. Now he hasn't even kicked on with his batting in Test cricket, and so who else was there? There were no other options, sadly, unless they brought in like a specialist captain. I mean, I wouldn't have been upset about if someone like Sam Curran was brought in. He's actually quite a sensible, level-headed bloke, which would make a change. So I wouldn't have minded that. But of the current team, you couldn't give it to Gay. You couldn't give it to Dockett. Um, you're thinking, well, who'd you give it to here? Not Jamie Smith. Not a bit too early for Bethel. I don't even know if Bethel is like a leadership. He's like a captain in waiting. Um, and you're down to the bowlers. Could you give it to any of them? Probably not. Unless they brought Pope back now that Stokes has retired. But Pope wasn't a very good captain anyway. So that there's no point in having him as a specialist captain because he wasn't a very good captain. So there we go. They've got Root because they've got no other reason, and it's telling that this is the result of over 4 years of McCollum, Key, Stokes in charge, where the players they produced are one-dimensional and entitled, and not very pleasant, and not hard-edged characters. And so hopefully the new coach can produce better candidates in the future. Lastly, now there's a very important point to be made here. If I believe the best man for the job should get it from regardless of the country that they're from. So if England had gone with Kirsten or Langer, someone of that ilk, that would have been great. If those guys weren't available or they didn't want those guys, why have they selected someone with no test experience ahead of their own best coaches? And does Rob Key have an issue, either conscious or subconscious, with English coaches? Does he have? I'm not saying it's a racism against himself. That's a bit weird, but a kind of prejudice against himself, against English coaches, coming from his time in county cricket, and where he's not able to. He just doesn't trust. He's definitely someone who doesn't seem to trust county cricket. Doesn't trust the players from county cricket. Doesn't trust the stats from county cricket. He doesn't pick players on their performances in county cricket. He looks to kind of he sees it more as like a kind of virus that infects players and wants people to be selected before they've played as much of it as possible. And also, I think you can see he feels this way about coaches. And there does have to be a look into why he's made this decision, because Gareth Batty and Jonathan Trott were better candidates than Fleming. They weren't better candidates than Kirsten or Langer, but they were better than Fleming. And Batty's achieved a lot as a Surrey coach, or he'll be at Surrey a very good side. He will win most will win leagues most of the time anyway. Although they probably wouldn't with McCollum, for instance, or Key in charge. So he could have gone for Batty, who'd won leagues with Surrey. Could have gone for Alex Stewart at Surrey as well, and he could have gone for Trott, who's done a very good job at Afghanistan. Now it doesn't translate that just because you perform better than you expected at a side that doesn't win that much, that you'll then be good with a side who is aiming to win big series and trophies. Well, I'm not sure the ECB are anymore, but that in theory. But they were both better choices than Fleming, and even Dawson was a kind of young and up and coming coach. And if you're not going to select them, if they've got no faith in their own coaches, well, who will have? And I think in particular, for Batty, for Stewart, for Trott, they'll think, well, that's my chance of being England coach gone because I can't do any more. For Dawson, he's still got time to do more, but even if he, wins 10 leagues in a row, Key would ignore him. So they'd have to just change. Hopefully, one day Key won't be there. Gordon Thompson won't be there, but whilst those guys are still there, English coaches just aren't getting a chance. So, in summary, it's an underwhelming appointment in terms of the coach. Captaincy, you can see why they've gone back to Root, even though it's underwhelming as well, and it's not really a forward-looking move. And there's an issue now with the ECB and Key in particular about a kind of a bias against either subconscious or conscious against English coaches.